So, yeah, I mean, I was introduced, so I don't need to talk much about me anymore, I guess. So, I'm currently based in Bern, Switzerland. That's kind of in the center of Europe. And we had snow this morning. It was like, I'm done with winter. I was looking forward to, we had some warm days already, but right now it looks white outside if I look outside the window. Yes, I mean, I put the cover of the book up there as well. It's doing fairly well. And if you like what you're hearing, anything, I also put on a list of upcoming trainings I'm hosting and kind of the other things which are typical. So I want to talk you through vision, value, validation, the 3 Vs, how we coined them Don and McGreal in our book, The Professional Product Owner. And that's for me really a conceptual mental model, kind of also when I'm engaging with customers and talk them through. And I'll just go through it step by step. So if you have questions, please hold them until I say any questions, because there's some things which often get explained later on, and then this would disrupt the flow a little bit. So I was experimenting in different ways. So far, this works best. Hope you understand. Now, let's dive into this one here. And we call it the product management onion. And normally what every organization has is they have a company vision.
Ralph,
Yes?
you might want to share your screen.
Yes,
otherwise
thank you.
I'm
Thank
getting
you.
lost.
You know, there's always this share screen. Here we go. And bang. And I'll also copy the link of the mural into the chat window if you want to look at more directly on your browser. You could do this then as well. Thanks, Marco, for bringing this up. Okay, so then let me jump back here. So normally every organization has a company vision, something they see themselves, where they want to be in a couple of years down the road. Now, based on the company vision, they come up with a business strategy. Now, further down in the onion, we have, and we really think about what is it what we want to do, kind of what is valuable and how could we do that. And this is what we would have here. This is a solution and value discovery. And then further down, delivery and validation. Someone doesn't want to write so well today. And now you can see there's this disconnect. The two layers which are empty. And in organizations which are more classical, so first of all, there's this disconnect. And in our book, we call it the product management vacuum. So maybe you remember from school, a vacuum has this really strong need to fill itself. And if you're not careful, yes, it will fill itself with classical things we know. So maybe we have a charter. Maybe we have milestones. Maybe we have the classical reports, which are often then based on time, budget, and schedule, scope, sorry. And you know, this is classical project management. And projects have the tendency to get their own dynamic. Being on time, on scope, and budget is more important than delivering the right customer outcome value. And this is exactly what product ownership is really all about. And product ownership has, and I call it product ownership, not just product owner, because doing it, living it. Now, essentially, what does this mean? That means you as, and this is why the line is further up here. This means you as a product owner, you have to have understood the intentions of the organizations, where they really want to go, why this is important for them. And if you have this understood, you can translate that into a product vision. And this could be a new product or the next version of an existing product, but it's really like, this is what we need to do here for that product in regard to the organizational vision and strategy they're driving right now. And once you have that, you can come up with the product strategy. But instead of just writing it down and throwing it over the wall to the developers, you would engage with them again. You would explain them why this is important, what you want to do, and maybe help them come up with answers as well. So there's this overlap. And in English, there's this word amalgamation, which I like to use here, because amalgamation means you bring two materials together without having an interface. It just flows from one to the other. And product ownership is the amalgamation from the organizational structure all the way down to the working product. I like to say strategy is easy. We need to do this. Someone has to fix that. Who is someone and how do they fix that? So the challenge is usually really in the operations and in the tactics. And I'll experience it again and again that I have a really good idea what I should be doing, but then I sit down and don't know how to start because tactics are hard. And this is really what product ownership is about and how you want to bring this together. But there's actually a little bit more to that, because if you really think about it, it also combines outcomes in a logical way. So the way you can think about it as this, what we have here is out of the EBM guide, which was evidence-based management, which was developed by Scrum.org. So think about the strategic goal which you have. That's the vision for the product in this case. Not company vision, but product vision. And it's out there. And it might move a little bit, but overall, it's really our North Star where we want to go. And then we have to think about what's the next step towards this direction we could be doing, a broader step, the intermediate goal. And then we would go on the smaller circles here. Think about it. These are our sprint goals, where we then find our way towards that direction. And because the goal is fixed, our path can change. I think we all know what complexity is about. We have the unknown unknowns. Things will surprise us. Things will not work. Something around will happen. Circle of control, circle of influence, out of control. So we cannot really know everything up front. And this gives us the chance to work with that. Now, if you really think about it, now, your company vision, your business strategy, your product vision, that's very strategic. Now, this gives us the orientation. And then the next bigger goal into the right direction, this is an intermediate goal. And then we have those actionable goals. And the way I like to map that, I like to map things overall. That's my way of thinking. So you think about the strategic goal. Again, this is the vision statement of the organization. Then they derive their business plan. Then you come up with a product vision, roadmap for that product. Part of that roadmap most likely will also be your next product goal you want to achieve. For me personally, a product goal is 4, 5, 6 months out. So if I would start something new, probably my next product goal would be August, September, somewhere in this time frame. And then you have the sequence of sprint goals going there, and then every day the developers assess, hey, how are we doing in regards to that? Our daily goal, what do we want to achieve on that way in this direction? And that's really beautiful for me in the regard is because we want to get out of this output thinking, because this classical project mindset here, time, budget, scope, this is, have you delivered what was said at the right time for the right money? It's output, it's quantity. So we have activities, they create output. Once we release it and give it into the hands of the users, it might turn into outcome in the way they say, yes, thank you, this is really what I needed. This is a great product, a great feature. And this leads to company impact, essentially the money, which we then can invest in new products and new features. Now, the way you can think about this is that, clear examples of that company vision is very strategic. That's your vision statement we have. Business strategy could be a business canvas, maybe. I like to use also the lean canvas quite a bit. Now, product vision, that's basically the intersection between strategy and intermediate, if you think about it. That's when you then would come up with a product vision. You can use the elevator pitch, which I think is always really easy. If I have a hard time to fill out the elevator pitch, even if I go to and talk to a customer, I often think like, I can't really position myself. I'm really not sure what's going on. Product box, working backwards, what Amazon is doing is really powerful as well. And or the wild important goal from the 4 disciplines of execution, which is a really good book. Then the product strategy, which would then be a roadmap, and then you would go further down where you would then come up with the product goal, which has been added to the Scrum Guide with the last version in 2020. Actually, I haven't copied it on there yet, but I created a product goal canvas. I will make an export of this PDF and make it accessible. So if you want to look at it later on, but you can just Google product goal canvas, which works really well because it brings also some metrics and other things in there as well. And then it really goes down to delivery and validation. And this is really kind of when you think you're working in the context of Scrum. And you take some ideas out of the product goal, you translate them into a smaller goal, slice of it, the sprint goal, but outcome, it's always outcome thinking. And then you work through that and then you see where you are. And this is then where the sprint review becomes really important. Now, you probably have heard when you talk about goals, well, a goal has to be smart. And I think smart goals are pretty okay, but not everywhere. And there's also this concept of fast goals, which to my understanding were developed by Google, Adobe, and some other companies, or someone came up with it. And FAST is an acronym for frequently discussed, ambitious, specific, and transparent. Because I think is a vision necessarily attainable? Maybe, hopefully, we aim for that, but we don't know yet. So I think the further up you are in this onion, the more fast it is. The further down you are, the more smart it becomes. There's also like this shifting happening. So a vision statement, well, it's specific, it's measurable, but it's frequently discussed. Hopefully we show it again and again in the sprint planning, in the refinement, in the review. It's ambitious. It should be. It should be specific enough that we know what to do, because it's this fixed star, and transparent. Everybody should have a good understanding where it is, what it means. And then you go further down. And now I think at some point around the product goal, that's fairly smart. Maybe the time bound might be a little bit missing because we're not sure if we really get there exactly at this time. But once you're in a sprint, you have a beginning, you have an end, you have a goal, you have the scope essentially, and you know how much a sprint is costing you. I like to think about sprints as mini projects in that regard. And you sequence them one after the other. Now, if you look at this one here, let's go back to this onion. How do they fit in here? And, oops, I need to quickly unlock them. Give me a second. Now, your product goal is somewhere between product vision and the strategy. Again, it combines those elements, going back to this one here. And then based on the product goal, you create your product backlog. Let me just move this a little bit aside so I don't hide the text. And there's a sentence in the Scrum Guide: the product goal is in the product backlog. So your current version of the product backlog really reflects the current product goal, nothing else. And this is really also beautiful because it helps you to make your product backlog smaller. I was just having a conversation with another company today. Their product backlog is like 850 items. How do you work with that? Now, if you have a product goal, your product backlog becomes much, much, much smaller. Then you take this product backlog and you refine it. This is more like an activity. Let's put it here to the side. And then once you have this, you take this refined product backlog into your sprint planning. In the sprint planning, you come up with your sprint goal. You create your sprint backlog for that one here. And then you have your daily scrum along the way. And then the last step in the validation is essentially your sprint review. That's when you show it to the stakeholders. And that's when the feedback loop closes. And this is really things like vision is really out there. Then through our vision for the product, through our product goal, through our sprint goals, which are all outcome oriented, we focus on value. And then in the sprint review, that's one part of validation. Because if we have real stakeholders, real end users in our review and they give us a thumbs up, this is really good, but we haven't shipped it yet. Now the final validation is really happening in the market once the customer has it in their hands. And the way you can think about the product goal, now just to clarify a little bit, is that, and I like to think often also in a triangle. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you can ask taste, price, service. And then you set one dot where you basically make a trade-off. Where is it here? And this is the same way you can think about the division is very strategic, but also highly risky. So it's really on the far side out there. Now the sprint goal is, hey, we believe we can do that. That's what we really want to put our teeth in there. So that's much more tactical. Still some risk, still some strategy. But and there was always this long stretch in between what we want to achieve and the current sprint goal. And this is really now beautiful because the product goal fills that. It gives us this one horizon element on the horizon a little bit further down. And this is the product goal canvas. It was actually on there. I just forgot about it. Sorry about that. So this is kind of how this guy looks like. And why is this important that we actually act and think along these ways? Because often what I understood is in many organizations, they think that, well, Scrum is this small machinery down there. We throw them something to do and then they crunch through it and they spit out the functionality. But this is not really what we want, because if you think about it, now up here you probably would have someone from the business side. And they would throw something over the wall. And then this person down here is our product owner. I always put a crown on the product owner. But maybe it's not really clear what's needed. And maybe the infrastructure and the tooling down here is not great. But all of those elements we have down here, they don't end up with the people in the business. Why? Well, because we have this disconnect here in between. And again, this is the vacuum. That's not what we want. So our effective Scrum team, and if you go over here, an effective Scrum team essentially covers all of that here. All of these areas. From the product vision all the way down to delivery and validations. Essentially, it brings us, let me just scroll over here, there. And as you can see, there's a consequence. We have this thin slice from the product vision all the way down to delivery and validation. And this is what product ownership is really all about. So essentially, if you are a product owner, you sit up here and you have to do all of that. Now, product owner work is a strong combination of strategic work and tactical work. And that works well if you work on a smaller product. However, if this product starts to grow and you might have several Scrum teams working for you for the same product in a scaled Scrum setup, it's too much work. Now, should you focus on the tactical work or on the strategic work? Well, you should focus on the strategic work. But the good news here is that you can delegate the strategic work into your team, because you hopefully have a good cross-functional team. So you might have business analysts, subject matter experts, UX people, and so on. So here you would then have your team. And then you have this overlap here when you can go out and talk to them. Again, this would be what I like to call the amalgamation between developers and product owners. So it's always a thin slice, and I think many organizations, they don't really appreciate that this is how they really think, oh, well, it's this team down there, we give them something, they turn it out into product. And if you really think about it, there's this continuous feedback loop going forward and backward. So the company vision informs the business strategy and also the product vision, which then informs what we could be doing in regards of the product goal, the sprint goals, what we do. And then once we have done this, the enactment of that basically feeds back information up here into the product strategy, and then even further up into the company vision, so that people further up really know what is going on. Now, this is really kind of, for me, the way I think about the 3 V's, and understanding what the organization wants. You translate that as a product owner into the vision for your product. Then you collaborate with the stakeholders. You set up the next intermediate goals, your product goals and other things. You bring it together. You try to really extract the right value for those people. And one of the things is that if somebody comes to you, I need this, always believe it's wrong. Because even if customers don't believe what they want, they probably don't. It's more really about understanding their problem. So if somebody comes and tells you, I need this, why? This is always the first good question, and really collaborate with them closely so that you have a really good chance of coming up with good ideas about value, then quickly implementing them and validate them as quickly as possible. And this is one of the for me also the core elements of agile, is that we will always make mistakes. We have the unknown unknowns, and if we will never make a mistake, we'll play it far too safe, and we will disappear in the big lake of mediocrity in the very end. So we have to take risks, educated risks. But this will also mean we will make failures. But if we manage to really compress the time between making something which is wrong and discovering it, it's okay to make failures. If there's only a couple of days, a sprint in between doing something, learning from that, and then we can build on that. And then you can really validate the value more frequently. And even learning, if you made mistakes, is valuable. And then you can build on top of that and really find a good way towards the vision you're anticipating. So this was my quick rundown through the 3 V's. So now I'm opening everything for questions.
We had one in here. Where does the problem statement play in this?
The problem statement for in regards to the product, or
Idris?
Yes, with regards to the product, the discovery stage. So where, do we need to identify the problem statement before we actually come to the vision?
Yeah. A very good point. This is really because it's, in the end of the day, a product solves a problem. And this is where we would have to have the problem statement then. And this is when I think along more the lines, there's something which is being used in user experience, lean startup thinking, where it's called the constable's truth curve. So the first part of it is really is this problem worthwhile to be solved? Now think about that. And once you have identified that this problem is really valuable to be solved, then you would think about which type of product do we need to build to solve that problem. So the first focus is always on the problem, much longer than most people think they should be. So yes, but this would be really fitting for me, kind of the business strategy, product vision. And I mentioned working backwards from Amazon before, and there's this great book out there with the same title. And what I really like in here is that if you have a product idea at Amazon, essentially you write a newspaper article about today Amazon launched Foo. Foo does this, Foo does that, Foo integrates with Alexa and does, and you basically describe the product like a newspaper article. And by doing this, you really make it obvious for the people how does it help? And then you can also say, hey, in this article, and these problems are solved because of this. And then at the end, you also have then a couple of pages of FAQs, what would be the frequently expected questions about that product. And then you would also give answers to that. And if you convince with this working backwards with this newspaper article and the FAQs, you get some venture capital for a couple of months, and then you can start building this product. And if they keep on liking what you do, so you get more money down the road. Okay, did I answer the question?
Yes, I do think so.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Ralph, from Karen. What are the key challenges you encounter when integrating this approach into an organization and your solutions?
I would say it's complacency. Because organizations, they have existing structures. And what normally happens is that the problem you bring in, or the idea of a product you want to build, gets broken down and made fit into the organizational structure, which is pre-existing. And to my experience, this is the totally wrong approach. Because if you divide and conquer, that means that the person who's in charge of that, and often it's still then a project manager, is more or less this horizontal. Project management is for me horizontal integration. You want to make sure all of the things they are there at the right time. Now, what I'm trying to answer here in a really long way is that you need to, the first question for every organization is you need to identify what are the products we are having. Now, you could go to an insurance company. I was once at an insurance company, and we looked at that from two angles. One answer was 15, I think it was, like life insurance, car insurance, and so on. And the other answer was like 96. But those 96 weren't really products. These were components. And I far often see product owners as component owners. And then you need to integrate all of that. And then, this is also then how it would still fit into your organizational structure. So you break it down into components to make your structure fit, and then the integration becomes a big mess. The way you have to really think about it is to say, what is our product and what are all the things we have to do? So what's the value stream for development for that? And then you have to structure your organization around that. And the way I think about it is like a subway map. You have, every line of a subway is one value streams, and there might be some. Let's go to London, Paddington, bang, everything comes pretty much together. It's a big thing. This might be a really important core component within the organization, but all of those value streams depend on that for specific products. And this is kind of the biggest challenge I see with organizations, the willingness to really say, well, these are our products. This is, now we figure out what we need for each one of those products. We identify the value stream for each one of those products, and then we see where those value streams have intersections. And if there's something where everything comes together, it's becoming an important point, and we need to think about how we manage that. But that's the first initial step. Hopefully, I answered the question.
All right, another one here, and forgive me on the pronunciation, Osni. Just to check, in the product canvas, which visions are you referring to? Product vision or vision statement?
You mean the product goal canvas? This guy here? Oh, let me just, here it's showing up. So this is really the product vision statements, whatever you come up with. This is pretty much a copy paste exercise. So once we have already a vision, I put it in there, but then I ask, hey, what is the product goal? And I really like to say maybe by when? By August, mid-August, we have this and this. Not more, one sentence. But then you provide the description for that, and that's the narrative. And one of the most powerful tools to cope with in complexity is the narrative. Make people talk to each other. Don't try to become much more clear about how you write requirements and more formal. Just bring people together and have them talk. So if you put someone in front of this canvas, they look at the vision. Okay, looks good. I like that. This is their next goal. That's nice. If they achieve that by August, I like that. Okay, and then they read the description, say, well, it makes sense. Yeah, I know where they're coming from. I know why they want to do that and all of those actions. And then you think about, once we have achieved that, how can we get the evidence? What is the outcome and measures we should be able to measure? And then I like to break it down between leading and lagging. So leading is before and lagging is afterwards, because sometimes it's not the same thing. But then also you put on the stakeholders, which are affected by that product goal. Who would be the users of what you do for that product goal? Who would be influencers, important people? They could be internal within the organization or external. Providers, all the dependencies, again, could be internal, external. If one of those providers doesn't deliver, you would have a major problem. And governance, internal governance. Maybe you have a PMO, we need to deliver certain numbers once a month. But maybe also external governance, laws and regulations, Sarbanes-Oxley, and here in Europe it's GDPR and stuff like that. How do we make sure we stay compliant with this? And then who's the Scrum team, the dedicated team? That's also another important thing. Going back to the question we had from Karen, what is the biggest challenge? Having stable teams, not the human resources and full-time equivalents which get shuffled around because an Excel sheet told us so. A good team, instead of thinking in projects, I think in products, but I guess go a step further, I just say, no, I think in a good team building me a product. And then I'll fund the team for a specific time to build that, work on that. And are there any risks we are aware of we can't really handle yet? That's the way I like to think about it. And then one product goal after the next. You would fill it out again and again. Okay, next question.
We have a follow-up from Karen. Do you have any more slides or anything else with the presentation, or are we all questions from here out?
It's pretty much all questions. So I thought it would take longer, so my apologies. I was probably talking too fast here. I mean, if I can tell you something else, which I think is probably also really relevant for you, talking about what I just said about the organizational structure. Takes 10 minutes, I can run you through that, and I think they would also give you some good insights.
I guess that could be tied in. Karen's follow-up question was, how do you work with the PMO? To what degree do they need to be involved?
Do they need to be
I don't mind if there is. Can you please come, Karen?
Oh, so the question was, to what degree do they need to evolve? But I also would suggest that to be involved is also good to add on to that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't mind if there's no PMO, but often there is one, and then, whatever numbers they have, they want it. So essentially for me, it's more like, okay, how can we give them those numbers so that they don't breathe into our necks all the time? The most important aspect here in Agile overall is really having this vertical slice of product which works every sprint. Now, if you think along the lines of complexity theory, of an increment of working product is such a powerful enabling constraint because that's real progress. Everything else is, well, we have this, we plan to do that. It's wishful thinking. Working product is, and this is what's also written in the Agile Manifest, the working product is the only measure of progress. And that really matters. And we need to get to this situation. And if you have this highly dispersed setup in organizations, you won't be able to do that. And let me just quickly run you through that here. Let me just bring my tablet in a better position. So many organizations are often set up like that. And I'll zoom in a minute. Let me just draw it out here. So. Here we go. Now, let's say this organization is working with Scrum, so they would be having a product backlog in each one of those areas. So normally my drawing is a little bit more beautiful, but in the sake of time. And where there's a product backlog, there has to be a product owner. Now the organization works on something. Let's say this guy here, a bigger product, a bigger initiative. And then you break it down, you do this, then you give it to them, then you give it to them, then you give it to them. They have nothing to do, they also do something. Now what happens in that situation? And I'll quickly pop this up here because it's the following. Now suddenly you have the sequential life cycle in milestone thinking. Now this causes dependency management and coordination effort. Ta-ta, our project is born. Now we have all this information scattered, a little bit work here, a little bit work here, high inventory, all spread out. Doesn't work so well, suddenly efficiencies become important. Well, you need to get better, but you know, if one component is optimized, it might even make the whole system even worse. The system needs to flow, not the components. These people here, they have nothing important to do for a long time, but they need to justify their existence. So they will work on unimportant items until they have to work on the important one. They probably go ahead and invent work. Then we will have an opaque measure of progress because we don't really know. Well, we have to trust we are doing well, we are doing well, we are doing well. No customer, whole product focus, cost of delay, less value. Now, if we think this is not so cool, it gets even worse because then the next thing comes up and then it looks like this. And then the next thing as well. And then I would say, oh, hey, Tammy, why didn't you deliver? Well, I would have delivered if Peter would have delivered. Hey, Peter, why didn't you deliver? Well, I would have delivered if Idris would have delivered. So why didn't you deliver? And everybody blames it on everyone else. I think we all have experienced that. Now, but in the end of the day, over here is our customer. And she or him has a problem. If I go to a bank for a loan, the loan is the product. Now, how does this work? So essentially, I have then to find out, so this would be the development or the component value stream. These are all the things we need in order to deliver that. Then you have to take this value stream, and this is what I said, because right now what we did is we broke the problem to fit into our organizational structure. But now we turn it around. We just say, okay, let's take this value stream and encapsulate that into a product, for which we have a product owner and a product backlog. And then we might have several teams working on that, and suddenly we are quickly in the scaled environment. So the big circle here would be a product. This would be a team working on the product, and a dot in here would be a developer. This is in an ideal world, but then we have the other products as well. And this goes back to the model when I talked about the subway map. So then we would have the red product here. With a product owner and a product backlog. And I'm sorry about this, but somehow Mural has a really bad support for drawing on a mural. Has a bad day today. Now you can see there are some overlaps, and the overlaps essentially they mean not that, and this is really important. Now listen really carefully. The overlap doesn't mean that there is one team working for two products. No. We have two products sharing a technology, and both teams, both developers of both teams have access to that. So I can play with the other team's toys, what they need, but I cannot break them. I can change them, I can extend them, but I have always to make sure they work for them. And this is where good engineering practices, continuous integration, build pipelines, automation systems come into the picture, but also individuals and interactions between those products. And again, think about also along the lines of the definition of done. For as long as they can say, yeah, we are done, we are done, we are done. Oh, we made all those changes in here, in this component, we are still done. Yeah, for us, it works still. It's great. So you would still have some areas where you would have to talk to the other ones, but overall, it's it's less bottlenecks. Up here, we have a sequence of bottlenecks. Down here, we have a few which we can manage better. And because we always know we have a working product, which is the most important thing, because that's something we can ship. If everything blows up, this is what we have. This is something we can ship. Okay, and let me build a little bit further on top of that. So going back to the subway example, for example, let's say we have this line here, and then we have this line here, and then we have, say, this line here, something like this, and another one. Let's do it like this. So then we can see, it's like, for example, yeah, this one here is really important, and this one, yeah, even more. Well, the other ones we have a look on, but not so much. So essentially, these are then the shared technologies which are basically impacting all the teams. But this also then makes it clear you need to have the knowledge, the skills in each one of those teams to deliver on that. And that's where the cross-functionality comes into the picture and makes it even more clear. And now if you think along the lines of, oh, come on, pen. See, here we would have the, you can see that, let me zoom in a little bit further. You would have the number of products, here the number of teams, one, more than one, more than one. Now at the bottom left, this is classical Scrum. Yeah. One product backlog, one team, one increment, and one sprint review. What I'm trying to draw here right now, which is hardly impossible on Mural, is a magnifying glass. So you look at that. Now, if you have one product where several teams are working out of that, that's scale Scrum. Excuse me, that's what I just draw. So you would have a larger product backlog. Several teams working out of this one here, but still one increment and one sprint review. Now at the top right, several products, several teams. Well, this is where your product portfolio is at home. So maybe you have a portfolio backlog, you would refine that and then bring the works into one of those teams, depending on what's most important. Now at the bottom right, one team working for several teams, one team working for several products, excuse me. That's where I like to draw this guy here, because this is really the zone of pain or even death. Okay? Just running in another direction, here we go. Why is this so? Because you have now one team working on several things, and that's what you have up here. They cannot commit, they cannot focus, they get always interrupted. And whatever they do will be late. It will always be chaos, essentially. But if you really manage to organize the people into those bubbles of products, and if there's interactions with some other products, let the engineers figure out how they cope with that. You will really bring up the flow in your system. You will bring up kind of your flow efficiency. And once you have that, you can start to think about resource efficiency. There are two efficiencies. The most Usually when organizations talk about efficiency, they mean resource efficiency. This just means we have one person or one thing really efficiently done. If it's the right thing, if this is causing other problems, we don't look at it. So we always have to zoom out, look at the overall flow, look at the value stream, and then organize ourselves around that. Once we have this flow going, we're really efficient at doing that, we can start to worry about resource efficiency. And it's the bottom line here. Now, are there questions about this? How do you, I'm reading it out here right now. So how do you avoid the cone of death if you're in a tech startup and only have one Scrum team? Well, then you always do the best you can. If there's no workaround, then there's no workaround, but it's bad. You don't really want to do that. But then the other question is tech startup. What is the tech? Usually a startup, that's what I usually see is that somebody has an awesome product idea. They form a company, they have a startup, they build that product. This product becomes successful. And the next question is, now what? What's the next cool thing you're going to deliver? And then they start to struggle, and that's often when they disappear. When they don't make it, if they don't get out of this, they don't manage to grow out of this state. Now here I'm wondering is, well, if you have only one team and several products, is it really a startup? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question here as well, a little bit. Do you have any suggestions how it might be possible to translate the onion layers in OKRs considering more traditional organizations? Actually, yes. And it's a video, not a blog. And I put this also onto the mural. So this is where I talk about essentially, it really is awesome in that regard because the vision is an objective, the product goal is an objective, the sprint goal is an objective. And can really tie them nicely together. And I think what's important here is with objective and key results is that you really need to understand how OKRs are supposed to be working. There's this nice book from John Dare out there, Measure What Matters, if I remember correctly the title. I mean, John Dare, he worked with at Intel with, who was the famous CEO at Intel? Andy Grove, here we go. He was working closely with Andy Grove. Then he had enough money to start his venture capital company. And then he was one of the earliest investors at Google. So he went to Google, they pitched their ideas to him and just say, you know what, I give you money, but I'll come and I'll teach you how OKRs work. And then we see what happened afterwards. So often what's misunderstood is that what the key results are. And key results could be also activities. I think more in key results based on what I have read and studied about it, things we will be doing. But things we will be doing also is there to achieve something, and this could be the objective of something lower level. Anyway, I just could put this on here, onto the mural here at the left as well. Anything else?
Nothing else in the chat right now. Does anybody want to come off mute and ask a question before we got about 4 minutes left? Well, Ralph, I'd like to thank you for coming and joining us today. I've already got takeaways that I can from today to go right back to work and start implementing.
Okay, I wish you all the best. Hopefully it could give you some inspiration, and you know where to find me on social media, I guess. Thank you.